Welcome to the Lumenverse. Before we begin, are you listening to this while it's raining, or is it sunny where you are? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoy our stories, please remember to like and subscribe. Now, let's begin. There's a man who once stayed at a roadside motel. Nothing fancy, just one of those lonely little places along a long, empty highway. The kind you stop at when you're too tired to keep driving. When he checked in, the clerk gave him a room key, but warned him about one thing. Don't look in the mirror after midnight. The night stretched on. The wind rattled, and around 12:30, he got up to splash some water on his face. Of course, he forgot the warning. He looked in the mirror. At first, it was just his own reflection staring back. The reflection smiled. His own face, his own eyes. But the grin was wide, sharp, wrong, and slowly it lifted its hand, though he hadn't moved at all, and tapped the glass, though he hadn't moved at all. The reflection reached out of the mirror, and it tapped. He backed away, fear in his heart, and when he looked back at the mirror, it was empty. The man seemed to have vanished into thin air. The clerk found his room unlocked, the bed untouched, luggage still there, as if he never slept. They say, if you stay in that hotel, you may just hear soft tapping coming from within the very mirror itself. Mysterious indeed. Mirrors hold secrets, and if you look close enough, you may just see something else staring back at you. Since we're already exploring, let's venture even deeper into the shadows. Mysterious phone calls in the dead of night, with nothing but the ghostly sound of breathing. How terrifying. The young woman, alone in her apartment, wondering if something or someone was on the other end of the line. A chilling phone call, a twisted voice, and now the door, slowly twisting open. This story is taking an even darker turn. Phones, doors, simple things, everyday things. But in the dark, they can become something else entirely. You're still here, good. Because this next one, it lingers in the quiet spaces between heartbeats. A mysterious train, different from the one he knew, old, and filled with shadows and silence. A figure in the distance, just a silhouette watching. Something was off, and yet, he continued forward, climbing aboard and taking a seat. Of course, let's make this one slow, deep, and truly terrifying. Listen closely. There was a man, just an ordinary man, who took the same train home every evening, 8:45, like clockwork, knew the rhythm of it, the squeal of the rails, the flicker of station lights, the muffled announcements echoing through the tunnels. It was routine, safe. But that night, the rain came down in sheets. Not just wet, it was heavy, as if something beyond weather pressed from above. The sky had gone black long before it should have, and lightning didn't flash so much as throb, lighting up jagged cracks across clouds like veins in dead skin. He stood alone on platform 3, his coat soaked through even though he'd only stepped out minutes ago, and watched for his train through a veil of falling water and fog rising from cracked concrete. When he heard it, the distant groan of metal grinding along rusted track, he almost sighed in relief. But then, the headlights didn't shine white like they should have been. They glowed dull orange, dimmed as if seen through smoke or cataracts. And when it pulled into view, it wasn't his train at all. This one looked ancient, older than any locomotive that should still be running, a relic with peeling paint revealing layers beneath. Reds now blackened to ash gray, yellow trim eaten away by rot or rust no cleaner could touch anymore. Its windows were clouded over from within, not fogged, but stained with grime that seemed to pulse faintly when struck by light. If you stared too long, you'd swear something moved behind them. Still, no other trains came at this hour, and cold crept into his bones. So he stepped forward anyway. The doors opened slowly, with a gasping sort of sound, like lungs collapsing after years without air, and they stayed open too long, as though breathing him in. He boarded cautiously, the floorboards creaking underfoot despite being tiled, and immediately felt wrongness seep into his body. Not fear yet, but displacement, an eerie sensation that time had skipped ahead while he wasn't looking. The car was icy inside, even colder than outside, beneath dripping eaves and wind-lashed platforms. Upon rows of empty seats stretched ahead, all facing forward, with tattered fabric sagging like skin off bone, and between them sat shadows thick enough to feel solid. At first glance, it appeared completely abandoned. Then he noticed movement. At far end, a single figure sat slumped in seat number 23, If numbers meant anything anymore, this car hadn't carried such markings on official diagrams, for its shape bore none matching current models. But there it was, a pale hand draped over armrest, and dark hair hanging limp across its face. No sound escaped him, but instinct screamed louder than thought now. Leave, run, go back. When he turned toward where he'd entered, the door had vanished behind him without noise or spark. 1 second there, next gone, as though erased by breath or forgotten entirely. Panic stirred low but sharp in gut, and suddenly, from deep within another carriage, further down tunnel-like corridor, stretching impossibly far backward, an eerie train carrying passengers who don't belong in its cars, lost in a dark tunnel of an infinite length. How chilling. And now, we move on to a different story, one that involves a house, an ancient house. A house with a haunting secret, a forgotten house, abandoned and haunted by a light that wanders through its rooms, shifting from window to window like fireflies. How haunting. One brave, or perhaps foolish boy dared to step inside the darkness, and what he found there would stay with him forever. He stepped into the house, the floor groaning beneath his weight like a living thing in pain. Dust hung in the air, thick and ancient, undisturbed for decades, maybe longer, yet swirling as if recently stirred. His flashlight beam cut through the dark like a knife through shadow, but it didn't feel like light belonged here. The walls were warped with damp, peeling wallpaper curling like dead skin. And then he saw them, shadows. Not cast by anything in the room, they stretched across the ceiling and down narrow hallways, long limbs, hunched figures standing just beyond sight. Yet when he turned, nothing was there, just silence. And then, a flicker, his flashlight dimmed for half a second, a breath held too long. When it flared back to life, footprints coated in dark moisture now marred the wooden floor. Bare feet, small ones, large ones, some bare soles trailing mud or worse. They began near him, but pointed deeper into the house, leading toward an open doorway where only blackness waited on the other side. He shouldn't follow them. Every instinct told him to run, to smash through another window and never look back. But something else tugged at his chest, cold fingers brushing his spine, curiosity, and dread wrapped together tighter than rope around bone, still breathing fast, but unable to stop. He stepped it for 1 foot after another, following those wet prints that left no sound when walked upon. They were already there. He wasn't making new ones. On a narrow hall lined with cracked photographs, all of strangers' faces scratched out, their eyes gouged from glass frames, and strange symbols etched faintly behind mold stains shaped almost like mouths open screaming. Then came a door at last, old oak swollen shut by time, and rot but not quite closed anymore. Someone had opened it before him? Or something? From under its edge seeped faint golden light, not electric. It pulsed slowly, unevenly, as though fed by candle flame buried deep below ground. And beneath that glow came sound, whispers. So many whispers they didn't form words. They wove together instead into waves of noise rising and falling, not random, but rhythmic. A chant, a prayer, or hunger-given voice. They slipped up through gaps between floorboards below that door, crawling along walls made slick with mildew smell thick enough to taste copper on tongue. Come. You've come home. Not leave this time, not spoken aloud. He couldn't hear them with ears alone. They pressed against skull from inside head, as if memory or dream. The boy reached out, hand shaking violently, touched doorknob, cold. He ran, screaming, breath trapped in chest bursting through throat like glass, kicked the door wide, and didn't stop, didn't turn, didn't even feel the thorns tearing his arms as he crashed through dead brush and brittle ivy choking the yard. The house let him go. That was the worst part. It let him leave, no hands grabbed, no footsteps chased, no voice screamed after him in rage or hunger, only silence behind, and then, faintly, a single candle flickering back to life in an upstairs window, then another, and another, lighting up each pane like eyes opening one by one to watch him flee. He made it home. They found him at dawn, soaked, barefoot, muttering to himself on his front porch, with dirt under his nails and something dark dried around his collar like old blood that wasn't there when he left. After that, he never slept past midnight, never turned off a light, never stood near a window after dark. And sometimes, when neighbors looked out their own windows late at night, they saw it too. Small points of golden light moving just behind trees near his house now, drifting from shadow to shadow, pulsing slowly, like someone carrying candles, watching, waiting. Because some houses aren't haunted by what's inside them, they're haunted by what they send out. And this one, it had chosen its next keeper now. Let's talk about something worse than a haunted house. Something that doesn't stay still at all. It follows you home. Not because it knows your name, but because it knows your steps better than you do. She told herself it was nothing, just nerves, just a trick of the mind. But each night from then on, she heard footsteps. First on campus, then in town, even in front of her apartment. Every attempt to see who was there failed, and every time she walked, the steps would match hers. Slower than hers, closer than hers. It wasn't footsteps anymore. An echo. The girl found herself growing more and more anxious with every echo of footsteps she heard. At times, she was sure she could hear breathing. Heavy breathing, like some large animal was stalking her. Quietly, patiently, just out of sight. She tried to ignore it, tried to tell herself it was all in her head, but the footsteps wouldn't stop following. No matter what she did, walk in the rain, run through back alleys, hide beneath a street lamp, they were there. Soft on the pavement, soft in the rain, soft always and closer than they should be. The sounds were too low to catch any words, but Sarah could make out a few syllables. Something deep and unfamiliar. At times, she swore she could hear another voice too, whispering back. The sound sent chills through the room. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling. Something was wrong. Not just with the apartment, but with her roommate. The way she smiled now, a little too slow, a little too wide, like her mouth remembered how to move but not why. She started watching her during the day. How she never answered questions directly anymore. How she'd pause before speaking as if waiting for permission. How sometimes she'd stare at nothing and whisper under her breath like someone feeding secrets to air. And then one night, Sarah woke to silence, not just quiet, but thick silence. The kind that presses on your eardrums like being underwater. The apartment's lights were off. In her roommate's room, a dim red glow pulsed beneath the door. Faint at first, then stronger, rhythmic, like breathing. She crept forward slowly, pressed an ear to the wood, and heard it again. The whispering, but clearer now. She knows. She sees. Let us in. And then softly, a voice that wasn't hers, she already has. Sarah stumbled back into her room, and didn't sleep again that night. Morning came gray and heavy with fog clinging low over rooftops like fingers searching windowsills for purchase. At breakfast, Sarah watched across the table as her roommate stirred sugar into coffee, spoons scraping slowly around ceramic. I had a dream last night, said Sarah carefully, that you weren't alone. The spoon stopped moving, not smiling this time, eyes still soft, human, but behind them, something else blinked first. Then, it wasn't a dream. That afternoon, the man kept his eyes on the road, hands tight around the wheel. The windshield wipers slapped back and forth, struggling to keep up with the downpour. Rain drummed hard against the roof, steady, unrelenting, like fingers tapping in rhythm from above. He glanced at her again, still not shivering, still perfectly still. Water dripped from her dress onto the seat. But when he looked a second later, there was no wet spot, as if it had been absorbed instantly, or never there at all. The address she gave was an old neighborhood, a quiet one. Rows of small houses tucked behind skeletal trees bending under storm wind. He turned slowly onto her street and followed it down, then slowed to a stop in front of an overgrown lawn, iron gate hanging crooked on rusted hinges. A cracked sign read Everwood Rest, not a house, a cemetery. He turned sharply toward her seat. She was gone. No door opened, no sound made. Just empty space where she had been. Cold air settling like breath long held and finally released. Heart hammering, he reached for his phone, and then saw it resting against the passenger window. A single damp print left by a small hand, slowly fading as if evaporating before his eye. And then he remembered what they say about that stretch of road. Years ago, during a terrible flood, a young girl drowned trying to walk home through rising water. Her body never found until weeks later, washed up miles downstream. But sometimes, people driving that same road late at night still pick someone up. Wet clothes, pale face, whispering lips, and every time, they always take them right back to where she should have gone all those years ago. Home wasn't forward, it was under. He drove off without looking back, and never took another late shift again. But you know what's worse than picking someone up who shouldn't be there? It's realizing you might already have something riding with you, right now, in your room, behind you in your silence, listening, breathing just slow enough not to be heard. The boy wandered through the empty house, the storm shaking its old wooden bones. The portrait's gazes followed him, their painted eyes unblinking. He could almost hear them whisper to each other. His footsteps echoed on the creaky floorboards as he walked. He felt eyes on his back, but every time he looked, he was still alone. Then, a sound stopped him in his tracks. The boy tried to make it make sense. Maybe it was just the wind, or lightning playing tricks on his eyes. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with those paintings. For days, he avoided the halls, taking new routes through the house. But every night, he'd wake to the sound of rain and the creaking of those pictures. Finally, he decided to face whatever was there. He walked back through that hall and found the woman looked up at the sky, then back at him. Her face was a mask of weariness and quiet sadness, like she'd been watching that dirt road since the day a young girl drowned decades ago. The man sat numbly, listening to the rain. There were questions he wanted to ask, but he could only manage one. What, what do you mean, every storm? The woman paused, thinking. Then, in a voice tinged with melancholy, she answered. Ever since that fateful night, every time a storm rolls in, she appears to those passing by, begging for a ride, always to the same place. The sound of rain filled the silence, sharp, constant as a heartbeat. The man stared out at the graveyard, the headstones etched by rain, names already fading from memory. The woman stepped forward, the lantern in her hand casting a trembling circle of light across the wet path. She never made it home that night, she said softly. Not really. Her eyes lifted to meet his, deep with grief, yes, but also with something else, recognition. You're not the first, she whispered. You won't be the last. A cold breath touched the back of his neck, the kind that doesn't come from wind or open windows, but from something standing just behind you, even when there's no one there. He turned slowly, eyes darting to the passenger seat again, still empty, but now he saw it. On the seat cushion, a small handprint, damp and dark as fresh mud, slowly shrinking, fading, like vapor curling into nothingness. And then from somewhere deep inside the house, a faint sound, a child humming, softly at first, off-key, like someone trying to remember a lullaby half forgotten after years underwater. He looked back at the woman, but her face had gone still, too still. Her lips weren't moving anymore, yet he could hear them, the words not spoken aloud, but whispered directly into his mind. Thank you. She got closer this time, closer than ever before. And then, the lantern went out. Darkness swallowed everything, sky, road, trees bent sideways in storm. Except for one thing. In his rearview mirror, just for a second, he saw her again, sitting in backseat this time, dripping water onto floor mats that didn't stain, and smiling faintly as if finally allowed some small peace, before vanishing without leaving only silence. And two words hanging on frozen air inside car windows, fog though engine was cold, almost home. Stories like these, they don't end clean. They linger, waiting under porches on rainy nights. They ride shotgun when headlights flicker. They whisper through vents and floorboards when clocks strike 3. Because some souls can't move on, or could be a girl who just wants to go home, and might already have climbed inside without saying hello. Not true norn. What moves beside you in your periphery? Could be rain slick road ahead, or could be a girl who just wants to go home, and might already have climbed inside without saying hello. Darkness pressed in on all sides as the man backed out of the cemetery. He drove in silence, headlights piercing the black. There was no one else on the road, no houses, no cars, just an empty road and the relentless rain. He could see his breath inside the car. Rain drummed on the roof like 100 tiny footsteps. The storm's roar was loud enough to drown out his own thoughts. The wipers thumped back and forth, struggling with the deluge. They kept missing a spot, right in the middle of the windshield. That spot, it wasn't just water. It was spreading. A dark, greasy smear, like oil rising from within the glass itself, creeping outward in jagged lines. And where it touched, the world outside began to distort. Trees warped into twisted figures, the road ahead split like cracked earth, and for a single flicker, he saw her again. Not in the mirror this time. In front of him, sitting cross-legged on his dashboard, eyes wide open, mouth silently forming words he couldn't hear, then gone. Windshield cleared with a shudder, as if something had exhaled through it, and silence fell inside the car so deep he could hear his own pulse hammering behind his ears. And then, his radio sparked to life without warning. Static. Static first, then a voice. Soft, childlike, cracked with old sorrow. Turn around. He didn't want to look, but he did anyway. Backseat empty? Yes. But cold air pooled there now, a natural chill sinking through leather like breath from an open grave. And on the window's fogged corner, one word had been drawn in delicate script. Mama, outside. The storm slowed at last, clouds parting as if they'd never been. So heavy, he reached his house minutes later, trembling hands killing the engine. He stepped out fast, slammed door shut behind him, as if locking away what shouldn't be real. But when he turned toward home, there she stood at his porch steps, not soaked anymore, wearing clean clothes that hadn't existed before, smiling not at him, but past him, at someone only she could see standing by her side. Her mother, herself, or something pretending both were whole again. She lifted one small hand, waved gently, and whispered, not loud enough for ears, but straight into mind, "Thank you, I'm here now," then vanished with moonlight slipping between thin clouds. Next morning, the man found no trace of rainwater inside car, no prints on seat, no damp clothes left behind. Only one thing changed. The address she'd given him. The wrong one, that cemetery gate, was written over and over on napkins scratched lightly into steering wheel's lux. Drawns was, into steering her rearview mirror, so maybe today will be their day home. Maybe yours is next. They saw another drain ahead. It left some rogue, thorn ride. His ass, Valerie's dryinged, or Leffenly's prass with full rike nothing. Today will be their day rolls. Maybe you're reading this late at night, alone, and thinking about that road you drive every day. That stretch of road that's never felt quite right. It always gives you chills when you drive it. That uneasy feeling of being watched. But every time you turn your head, nothing looks back. Maybe you think it's just a trick of shadows, a bit of darkness your mind made up. But maybe there's more to that road than you think. You know the streetlight that flickers, always at exactly 3:17 a.m., the one just past the old overpass, where the trees hang low and their branches tap against passing cars like bony fingers checking for warmth. It wasn't always there. They say it was installed after a crash no one survived, but no police report was ever filed. No wreckage found, just tire marks burned into asphalt in a perfect circle, like someone drove in endless loops until they simply stopped. And sometimes, on nights when the moon hides behind clouds, you can hear it. A radio playing softly from nowhere, static between songs, then a voice. Next caller, you're on the air. But there's no station tuned in. No phone glowing with calls unknown, just your car, and you, and that same quiet whisper curling from unseen speakers. Do you believe in second chances? And if you listen too long, your reflection in the rearview mirror blinks. 1 second too late, you don't notice it at first, just a twitch in the corner of your eye. A flicker in the glass behind you, but when you look, really look, your reflection is still watching the road ahead, even though you've already turned your head. And its face, cleaner than yours, drier, like it hasn't been driving through storm and shadow all night, like it's been waiting here for hours. Then, softly, from the dashboard speaker, no radio on, no Bluetooth connected, the lullaby begins again. Hush now, Mama's coming, close your eyes, it's her voice, the girl from the rain, but not sad anymore. Now it's warm, gentle, most loving, and yet, every hair on your arm stands up because no child should know how to sing with so many voices at once. Your hands grip the wheel tighter, breath shallow as fog builds inside despite cold outside, too sharp to fog glass. But there it is anyway, creeping across windshield like fingers searching for purchase. And inward appears, not written by hand, but by something breathing just behind you. Stay. That's when you see them. Lights down the road ahead, not headlights. These are smaller lanterns, carried low by small figures standing along both sides of asrest in old-fashioned coats, buttoned to chins, dripping wet though sky has cleared, all facing inward. Waiting for someone to finally come home with them this time. Not pass through, not drive away trembling and confused, but stay to fill an empty space at their table. An unmarked grave beneath willow tree. where name has worn off stone long ago, a missing chair rocking gently, though no wind blows, and worse, part of you wants to stop, to open that door, to step into cold mist and walk among them. Because what if she wasn't trying to scare him? What if she was inviting him home instead? What if loneliness isn't only hers, but yours too, growing quiet over years, hollowing out hearts slow enough? Never noticed till now, till song began again under breath, till eyes met ghost that looked back with recognition, like old friend returned after decades apart, saying without words, "We've missed you." So ask yourself, not as story ends, but as silence returns tonight, while reading alone under dim lamp or blue glow phone light casting long shadows walls that seem deeper than before, have you ever picked up a hitchhiker who never made a sound? Or driven past places where time feels thin, where memories bleed into present like watercolor left out in rain? Or woken suddenly certain someone stood near bed just seconds before waking, but door closed, windows locked, air still, nothing broken, except peace gone missing? Felt absence, even now brushing spine, soft warning. Some stories don't end when told. They settle beside us quietly, become part of quiet moments afterward. Linger longer than punchline, fear, fade, always, always, return, new form, new night, new voice, whisper, barely audible, maybe real, maybe imagined, until hard tell difference anymore between tale told aloud and truth crawling close, unseen, patient, familiar, almost loved, familiar enough, call family, eventually close enough, say, come home. Even if home isn't really yours anymore. But that's the thing about stories like these. They never truly end. Because somewhere, right now, someone is standing alone in the rain, hoping for a ride home, waiting beside a road that stretches on into the night. As darkness grows heavier, as shadows crawl closer, as the wind whistles a bit colder, that sometimes even the most ordinary night can hide something extraordinary. And sometimes it takes one good ride to find the right path to where you truly belong.